Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something that most people are afraid to even bring up out loud, yet it's one of the most powerful, transformative, and deeply human topics there is: intimacy. Not just the surface-level kind, not the small talk of romance, not the rushed moments when you're distracted or disconnected, but the real kind of intimacy that requires you to show up with courage, with presence, and with a willingness to be vulnerable. The best way to truly connect with your partner isn't about fancy moves or secret tricks, it's about learning to listen with your entire body and your entire heart. Most people think intimacy is about performance, about whether you measure up or not, about whether you impress, but it's not. It's about presence. It's about being willing to slow down and notice the little details that most of us are too hurried to even register. It's the way your partner's breath changes when they feel understood. It's the way their shoulders relax when they feel safe. It's the way a simple touch can communicate volumes when it comes from a place of genuine love and attention. Too often we are in our own heads, worrying about what we look like, worrying about what we sound like, worrying about whether we're doing it right, and in that rush of self-consciousness we completely miss the point. True connection isn't about doing it right. It's about being attuned. It's about noticing what brings your partner comfort, what makes them feel valued, what reminds them that they are desired not just for how they look but for who they are. That's the energy that builds passion. That's the energy that makes intimacy unforgettable. You want to know the best way to take your relationship deeper? Put away the idea that you need to impress. Instead, decide to immerse yourself in the moment. Instead of performing, participate. Instead of rushing, linger. Instead of assuming, ask. Intimacy at its best is a collaboration, not a performance. What most people miss is that emotional connection and physical connection are not separate, they are threads of the same fabric. You cannot rip one out and expect the other to be strong. When you show up with patience, when you show up with curiosity, when you show up ready to discover what your partner really wants, that's when the magic happens. And you can't fake that. You can't fake listening. You can't fake care. You can't fake trust. The energy you bring into the most private spaces of your relationship tells your partner whether they are truly seen and cherished or whether they are just another item on your to-do list. That energy changes everything. So when we talk about the best way to create pleasure, satisfaction, and closeness, it's not about a step-by-step manual. It's not about some secret technique you read online. It's about attention. It's about respect. It's about letting go of the ego and instead tuning into the signals your partner gives you. The truth is, your partner will always tell you what they need. The question is, are you listening? Are you willing to set aside the noise in your own head and really notice the rhythm of their breathing, the way they move closer or pull back, the way their body reacts when they feel safe enough to let go? That is where the real power lies. Because intimacy isn't just about pleasure, it's about trust. It's about creating a space where your partner feels they can be their whole self without judgment. It's about letting them know they are enough, they are beautiful, they are wanted. That's what allows the deepest connection, the kind that lingers long after the moment ends. And when you show up like that, when you're present and attentive and willing to let go of your own agenda in order to discover someone else's truth, you don't just create a moment of closeness, you create a bond that grows stronger with time. That's the real secret, and it's available to anyone willing to slow down, pay attention, and love with their whole heart. Intimacy is about presence, not performance, and when you really let that truth sink in, everything about how you approach connection with another person changes. Most of us have been conditioned to think that we need to prove ourselves, to impress, to hit some invisible standard of what's good enough, and that mindset pulls us out of the very moment where intimacy is built. Performance is about being outside yourself, worrying about how you look, how you sound, what someone else might be thinking about you, and that makes you self-conscious. Presence, on the other hand, is about being completely tuned in, right here, right now, noticing not just what's happening on the surface but the subtleties, the signals, the feelings that emerge when you truly pay attention. When you shift away from performance and into presence, you realize that connection is not about doing something spectacular, it's about being fully engaged. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most connected to someone else. It wasn't when they tried to dazzle you with rehearsed lines or show off with some practiced move. It was when they were really there, looking at you, hearing you, responding to you in real time without trying to control the outcome. Presence communicates something performance never can. It tells your partner that you are with them, that you see them, that you are not distracted by the noise in your own head. It's the difference between going through the motions and actually experiencing something together. Performance is external, it's about validation, but presence is internal, it's about connection. Presence requires courage, because to be present you have to let go of control. You can't script it, you can't predict every moment, you can't guarantee perfection. Instead, you have to lean into the uncertainty of real human interaction, which is where the beauty lies. It's in the unpredictability, the pauses, the silences, the unscripted laughter, the small shifts in body language, the breath that quickens when something feels right. When you are present, you notice these things, and when you notice them, you can respond in ways that deepen connection. Performance misses those cues, because performance is about focusing on yourself. Presence is about focusing on the other person and the shared moment you're creating. It's easy to slip into performance, because performance feels safe. You can memorize steps, you can repeat what you've done before, you can hold on to an illusion of control. But the truth is, performance distances you. It creates a barrier, because while you're acting, you're not actually feeling. Presence demands vulnerability, and vulnerability is scary, but it is also the birthplace of intimacy. To be present is to put down the mask, to stop worrying about whether you're good enough, and to instead focus on whether you're truly here, fully aware, fully alive in the moment with another human being. When you're present, time slows down. You notice the texture of their voice, the warmth of their skin, the way their eyes change when they feel cared for. You notice how small gestures mean more than grand gestures. You realize that connection isn't about the big performance, it's about the little consistencies, the way you listen, the way you notice, the way you respond with empathy instead of rushing ahead to the next thing. Presence transforms something ordinary into something extraordinary, because it's not about the act itself but the energy you bring to it. Most people don't even realize how much they're missing. When they're stuck in performance mode, they think they're doing everything right, but they're not really there. They're running through a checklist instead of tuning into what is happening in the moment. And because of that, their partner feels the difference. Presence can't be faked. People know when you're distracted. They know when you're trying to impress instead of connect. They can feel when your energy is divided between them and your own self-doubt. On the other hand, they also know when you're fully present, when you're locked in, when you're not just hearing them but actually listening, not just touching them but actually feeling, not just speaking but actually meaning every word. Presence is what creates safety, and safety is what allows intimacy to deepen. When someone feels you are truly with them, they relax, they open up, they let go of the walls they normally keep up. Performance doesn't create that safety, because performance is about judgment. Will this be enough? Will I be liked? Will I be approved of? Presence creates the opposite. It says there is no judgment, only attention, only curiosity, only acceptance of this moment as it is. That's what makes presence so powerful, and that's why it will always matter more than performance. Intimacy is about presence, not performance, and this distinction is what separates a shallow experience from a deeply meaningful one. Performance is rooted in fear, in the desire to impress, in the constant worry of whether you are good enough, and when you are caught in that cycle you disconnect from what truly matters. Presence is the opposite. Presence is about slowing down, tuning in, and being fully engaged with the person in front of you. It's noticing the small signals that tell you what feels good, what feels safe, and what brings comfort. It's hearing the subtle changes in tone, noticing the shifts in breathing, catching the look in their eyes that says more than words ever could. When you are present, you are not distracted by your own insecurities or the noise of your thoughts, you are focused on the shared experience unfolding in real time. This creates trust, because your partner feels seen, valued, and respected. Performance may make you look impressive for a moment, but presence makes you unforgettable because it communicates care, it communicates attention, and it communicates that you are there not to prove yourself but to connect. Presence transforms ordinary interactions into extraordinary ones, because when you fully show up, the other person feels safe enough to open up, and that is when true intimacy begins to grow. Listening and paying attention build deeper connection, and this is something many people underestimate because they assume intimacy is about what you do rather than how you show up. True intimacy doesn't begin with action, it begins with awareness. When you listen, not just with your ears but with your whole presence, you create a space where your partner feels acknowledged. It's in the way you notice the small shifts in their tone of voice, the way you pick up on the subtle changes in their body language, the way you recognize that silence can sometimes say more than words. Attention is powerful because it tells someone they matter enough for you to put your own distractions aside and fully focus on them. That act alone builds trust, and trust is the foundation of connection. When you pay attention, you begin to understand your partner on a deeper level. You learn what excites them, what soothes them, what helps them feel safe, and what makes them pull away. Without listening, you're left guessing, and guessing often leads to disappointment or disconnection. But when you truly listen, you don't have to guess because they are already showing you through their words, their expressions, and their energy. The problem is that many people think they're listening when in reality they're only waiting for their turn to respond, or they're distracted by their own thoughts, or they're so focused on the outcome that they miss the process. Genuine listening requires you to be quiet inside yourself so that you can fully absorb what's happening in front of you. Paying attention also means remembering the details, the things your partner might assume you'd overlook. It's recalling a story they told you weeks ago and bringing it up again to show you cared enough to hold on to it. It's noticing when they're a little quieter than usual and asking about it instead of ignoring it. It's observing the small ways they react to your touch, your words, your energy, and adjusting based on what makes them feel more at ease. These acts of attention show your partner that you are not simply going through the motions but that you are invested in them as a person, and that investment deepens the bond between you. Listening and paying attention build a language of connection without needing constant explanation. Over time, your partner feels safe to be more honest, to share more openly, to let their guard down because they know you are actually hearing them. This safety leads to more closeness, more trust, and ultimately more passion, because when someone feels understood they also feel freer to express themselves. Without listening, intimacy stays shallow, but with listening, intimacy becomes layered, rich, and deeply satisfying. It is not about grand gestures or dramatic actions but about the steady, consistent act of showing up with your focus, your patience, and your willingness to hear and notice what truly matters. Emotional and physical closeness are inseparable, and when you begin to understand that truth, it reshapes the way you approach every part of a relationship. Too often people try to separate the two, as if physical intimacy can exist in its fullest without an emotional foundation, or as if emotional connection can be sustained without any form of physical closeness. The reality is that the strongest bonds are created when both layers are nurtured together, when you realize that what happens in the heart directly affects what happens in the body, and what happens in the body reinforces what is felt in the heart. Emotional closeness is what creates the safety for someone to let go, to be vulnerable, to open themselves up fully to another person. Without that safety, physical intimacy can feel mechanical, distant, or even forced. When someone doesn't feel emotionally seen, respected, or cared for, they will hold back, even if they don't say it directly. On the other hand, when emotional connection is strong, when there is trust, when there is genuine affection, physical intimacy becomes richer, more meaningful, and more satisfying. It's not just an act, it becomes an expression of everything you already share. Physical closeness is equally important because it reinforces and amplifies the emotional bond. A simple touch, a hug, a hand held a little longer than usual can communicate things words never could. These moments of contact remind your partner that you're there, that you're present, that you value the connection enough to express it not just in conversation but in action. Physical closeness can anchor emotional closeness, giving it a tangible form that deepens the sense of belonging between two people. When couples neglect one side of this equation, the connection suffers. If you focus only on emotional closeness without physical expression, the relationship can start to feel more like a friendship than a partnership, leaving one or both people longing for more. If you focus only on physical closeness without emotional depth, the connection can feel shallow, unsatisfying, and unsustainable in the long run. It's the blending of both that creates a bond that is strong, resilient, and deeply fulfilling. Understanding the inseparability of emotional and physical closeness also requires you to be attentive to balance. Sometimes your partner may need more emotional reassurance before they can engage fully on a physical level. Sometimes physical affection can be the bridge that opens the door to emotional sharing. By noticing and honoring these needs, you build a cycle of connection that feeds both sides, creating a rhythm that strengthens the relationship over time. The deepest connections are not built on isolated moments but on the ongoing interplay between emotional presence and physical touch. Each reinforces the other, each magnifies the other, and together they form the foundation of a relationship that is not only passionate but also lasting. When you nurture both sides intentionally, you create a bond where intimacy thrives, where trust is continually renewed, and where love is experienced in every dimension. Trust and safety create lasting intimacy, and without them, no amount of affection, attraction, or passion can hold a relationship together in a meaningful way. Intimacy, whether emotional or physical, requires vulnerability, and vulnerability cannot exist in a space where someone feels judged, unsafe, or uncertain about whether they will be accepted. When trust is present, it becomes the foundation on which everything else is built. Safety is the environment that allows both people to express their true selves without fear of being dismissed, criticized, or abandoned. Without trust and safety, people hold back, they guard themselves, and intimacy becomes surface level instead of deep and lasting. Trust is not built through grand gestures but through consistent actions over time. It comes from keeping your word, showing up when you say you will, listening without dismissing, and creating an atmosphere where your partner feels they can rely on you. These small but steady signals build a sense of stability that becomes essential for deeper intimacy. Safety is built in the same way, through the way you respond to your partner's openness, through the patience you show when they are vulnerable, and through the reassurance that they are valued and respected no matter what. This consistency creates a space where both people feel they can let down their guard. When trust and safety exist, intimacy becomes more natural and effortless. Conversations flow with more honesty because there is no fear of judgment. Physical closeness feels more meaningful because both people know it comes from a place of respect and care. Emotional sharing becomes easier because both individuals understand that their truths will be honored. The absence of trust, however, leads to hesitation, distance, and insecurity. Without safety, partners start to question themselves, question each other, and over time intimacy erodes under the weight of doubt. Creating trust and safety requires intentional effort. It means being reliable, being emotionally available, and practicing empathy. It means addressing conflicts with honesty instead of avoidance, and it means choosing to work through challenges instead of retreating when things get difficult. Trust and safety are not built in a day, but they can be destroyed in a moment, which is why they must be continuously protected and prioritized. Every time you listen without judgment, every time you reassure instead of criticize, every time you follow through on your word, you strengthen that foundation. Lasting intimacy is about knowing that you can be fully yourself and still be accepted. It's about understanding that mistakes will happen but forgiveness and understanding are stronger. It's about realizing that no matter what, your partner has your back and you have theirs. When trust and safety define the environment of a relationship, intimacy doesn't just survive, it thrives, deepening over time in a way that no performance or surface-level connection ever could. True passion comes from respect, patience, and vulnerability, and when you begin to see how these three qualities work together, you realize that passion is not something that just happens by chance, it is something that grows through intentional effort. Respect lays the foundation because it communicates that you see your partner as an equal, that their feelings, boundaries, and desires matter as much as your own. Without respect, passion turns into control, and control kills intimacy. Respect is not just about words, it's about actions, about the way you listen, the way you honor what your partner shares, the way you treat their needs as important instead of dismissing them. Respect is the soil in which passion takes root, because when someone feels respected, they are free to show up authentically, and that authenticity fuels connection. Patience is equally vital, because passion is not always instant and it cannot thrive in pressure. True intimacy takes time, it unfolds at its own pace, and the ability to slow down and let it develop naturally makes the experience richer. Patience means not rushing to an outcome, not forcing closeness, but allowing trust and comfort to build layer by layer. It means staying present when your partner needs more time, more reassurance, or more space to open up. When you are patient, you show that you care about the process, not just the result, and this creates a sense of security that encourages your partner to let go of fear. Passion grows deeper when it is nurtured with patience, because what is given freely and without pressure becomes far more powerful than what is demanded. Vulnerability is what brings everything to life, because without vulnerability, passion remains on the surface. To be vulnerable is to risk being seen, to put down the mask, to admit your fears, your desires, and your truths. Vulnerability is scary because it opens the door to rejection, but it is also the very thing that creates closeness. When you are willing to be vulnerable, you invite your partner to do the same, and in that mutual exchange, passion becomes authentic. It is not about pretending to be perfect, it is about being real, and real connection is what makes intimacy unforgettable. Respect, patience, and vulnerability together create an environment where passion doesn't fade but grows stronger over time. Respect ensures that both people feel valued, patience ensures that the relationship has space to breathe and evolve, and vulnerability ensures that what is shared is honest and raw. Passion born from these qualities is not fleeting, it is sustainable, because it is built on trust and truth rather than on surface attraction alone. When you show up with respect in your words and actions, with patience in your presence, and with vulnerability in your openness, you create a connection that is not only passionate but also lasting, and that is what transforms intimacy into something extraordinary.